Tom Harrington shuffled into Silverline Motors on a cloudy Wednesday afternoon, his worn leather boots tapping against the pristine showroom floor. The place gleamed with opulence. Shiny SUVs lined the walls, sleek sedans sparkled under strategically placed lights, and salespeople, dressed in sharp suits, moved with calculated precision. Tom, however, didn't quite fit the image of the dealership's usual clientele. His plaid shirt was faded, his jeans were frayed at the edges, and his well-worn cap hinted at years of outdoor labor. But his eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the cars with a discerning gaze that belied his unassuming appearance. It had taken Tom a while to decide to come here. His trusty 1972 Ford pickup, a vehicle he had cherished for decades, had finally succumbed to old age. After weeks of trying to repair it in his small garage, he realized it was beyond saving. Reluctantly, he decided to buy a replacement. The thought of stepping into a glossy dealership like this one made him uneasy. It wasn't about the money. Tom had enough tucked away from a lifetime of hard work. It was the culture of such places, the sharp focus on appearances and status, that made him feel out of place. As Tom approached a metallic gray sedan, one of the salespeople, a young man with gelled hair and a smug grin, glanced at him and then quickly looked away. Tom raised his hand to catch his attention. "Excuse me, could I get some help here?" The salesman hesitated, his eyes scanning Tom's worn clothes. He forced a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Sure thing. But are you looking for something specific? These cars can get pricey." Tom's jaw tightened. He ignored the insinuation and pointed to the sedan. "How much is this one?" The salesman chuckled, glancing over his shoulder at his colleagues. "Oh, that's one of our premium models. It might not be the right fit for someone looking for something more budget-friendly. Maybe check out the used section." Laughter erupted from a small group of salespeople near the back, clearly listening in. Tom felt the heat rising to his face, but kept his composure. "I asked about this car. What's the price?" Before the salesman could respond, another staff member, a tall man in an expensive suit, strode over, clearly sensing the growing tension. This was the manager, Ray Cormack, the face of Silverline Motors. His smile was wide and practiced, but his tone was condescending as he addressed Tom. "Sir," Ray began, placing a hand on Tom's shoulder as though speaking to a confused child, "this might not be the place for you. We have a policy of prioritizing serious buyers." Tom stared at Ray, his expression unreadable. "And what makes you think I'm not serious?" Ray's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He wasn't used to being questioned. "It's just, we like to match our customers with cars that suit their needs. Perhaps something more practical would work better for you. Maybe one of our older models." Tom took a step back, his eyes narrowing. He knew when he was being underestimated. The muted whispers and muffled laughter from the staff were confirmation enough. His weathered hands, calloused from years of hard work, clenched at his sides. "I see how it is," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with quiet resolve. Without another word, Tom turned and walked out of the dealership. As he reached the sidewalk, he paused, pulling a cell phone from his pocket. He dialed a number, and after a few rings, a voice on the other end answered. "It's me," Tom said simply. "I think it's time to pull the trigger on that deal we talked about." The person on the other end said something, and Tom smiled faintly, his demeanor calm but resolute. "Yes, Silverline Motors. Let's move forward." He hung up and slid the phone back into his pocket. As he walked away, the dealership staff had no idea that the quiet man they had dismissed so easily wasn't just a frustrated customer. He was a man of action, a man who had spent his life solving problems with precision and determination. And this time, the problem wasn't an old pickup truck. It was the culture of arrogance and superficial judgment that Silverline Motors had made its business model. What none of them knew yet was that Tom Harrington had the means, the connections, and now the motive to change everything. Tom Harrington's walk back home was slower than usual, his mind buzzing with thoughts. The crisp autumn air did little to cool his simmering frustration. As he passed by neighbors tending to their yards or chatting on porches, he exchanged polite nods but said little. Inside, though, he was replaying every moment of the encounter at Silverline Motors. He wasn't one to dwell on slights, but this wasn't just about him. It was about a culture that valued appearance over substance, wealth over integrity, and something about the smug confidence of that dealership staff made him want to act. When Tom reached his small home, nestled on the edge of town, he made his way to the garage. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal greeted him like an old friend. Here, surrounded by tools and the remnants of his once trusty pickup truck, he felt at ease. This was where he'd spent countless hours tinkering, problem-solving, and creating. It was in this very garage that he had once designed a component for diesel engines that would revolutionize efficiency, a design he later sold to a major manufacturer, earning him enough money to retire comfortably. Sitting on a wooden stool, Tom pulled out his phone again. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for, Elliot Parker. Elliot had been Tom's business partner years ago when they'd started a small engineering firm together. While Tom had chosen a quiet life after selling the company, Elliot had gone on to build a modest empire, investing in various ventures across the region. The two had remained close, occasionally meeting for lunch or exchanging calls, but this would be the first time in years Tom would ask for a favor. The phone rang twice before Elliot's familiar booming voice answered. "Tom, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Tom chuckled softly. "Elliot, I need your help. It's about a business opportunity." There was a pause, then a curious tone. "You? A business opportunity? This I've got to hear." Tom explained the incident at Silverline Motors, recounting every detail. The condescending manager, the dismissive staff, the quiet humiliation he'd endured. Elliot listened without interruption, and when Tom finished, there was a brief silence on the other end. "Well," Elliot finally said, his tone thoughtful, "you've got my attention. What's the plan?" Tom leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I did some digging last year, just out of curiosity. Turns out Silverline Motors isn't doing as well as they let on. They're bleeding money, barely staying afloat. The owner, Ray Cormick, took on some bad loans to expand too quickly, and now he's desperate for cash flow. I want to buy the dealership, quietly, anonymously." Elliot let out a low whistle. "Buy the dealership, and then what? Run it yourself?" Tom shook his head, even though Elliot couldn't see him. "No, I don't want to run it. I want to fix it. That place doesn't just sell cars. It shapes how people in this town are treated. It's the biggest dealership around, and it sets the tone. I want to turn it into something better. A business that respects people, no matter how they look or what they have in their pockets." Elliot was quiet for a moment, then he laughed. "You've always been the idealist, Tom, but you've got a point. And it just so happens I've been looking to invest in something local. Consider me in." Relief washed over Tom, but he wasn't done. "One more thing. I don't want Ray or his staff to know I'm behind this. At least, not at first. Can we structure the deal so it looks like it's coming from one of your companies?" "Of course," Elliot said easily. "I'll have my team handle the details. This could take a few weeks, though. Are you okay with waiting?" Tom nodded, determination hardening his features. "I've waited long enough. A few weeks won't hurt." Over the next few days, life went on as usual in town, but Tom's days were anything but ordinary. When he wasn't working with Elliot's team to finalize the purchase, he was quietly gathering information about Silverline Motors. He learned about Ray Cormick's flashy lifestyle, his luxury cars, his sprawling estate on the outskirts of town, and his reputation for cutting corners wherever possible. Tom also paid attention to the staff. He asked around, discovering that many of the younger employees had left after being unable to tolerate the toxic environment. The ones who remained were either as arrogant as Ray or too desperate for work to stand up to him. Despite his anger, Tom didn't feel hatred toward the staff. He saw them as products of the culture Ray had created, a culture built on greed and superficiality. But that didn't mean he would let them off the hook. He had plans, big plans, and every detail needed to be perfect. Finally, the day came. Elliot called Tom with the news. It's done. The paperwork is signed, the funds have transferred, and as of this morning, you're the proud owner of Silverline Motors. Tom felt a surge of satisfaction, but he kept his tone measured. Good. Let's keep it quiet for now. I want to make an entrance they won't forget. Elliot laughed. I wouldn't expect anything less. What's the plan? Tom didn't answer right away. He stood in his garage, looking at the tools and parts that had been his companions for so long. Then he smiled, a rare glint of mischief in his eyes. You'll see soon enough. The next morning, Tom dressed in the same faded jeans and plaid shirt he'd worn on his first visit to the dealership. He added his old cap for good measure. As he approached Silverline Motors, he noticed the same salespeople milling about, their laughter echoing across the lot. None of them noticed him until he stepped inside. Can I help you? A familiar voice drawled. It was the young salesman who had dismissed him before, his smug grin firmly in place. Tom smiled faintly. Yes, you can. Could you get Ray Cormack for me? I have some business with him. The salesman's grin faltered slightly. Ray doesn't usually meet with customers. What's this about? Tom met the man's gaze steadily. Trust me, he'll want to hear this. Reluctantly, the salesman disappeared into the back office. A few minutes later, Ray appeared, his expression one of mild irritation. You again, he said, his tone less than welcoming. What is it this time? Tom took a step forward, his voice calm but firm. It's about this dealership. As of today, it's mine. Ray blinked, clearly caught off guard. What are you talking about? Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document, handing it to Ray. The room seemed to go still as Ray read the papers, his face draining of color. When he finally looked up, his voice was shaky. This can't be right. It is, Tom said simply. And now that I own this place, we're going to make some changes. The staff, who had been watching the exchange from a distance, began to whisper among themselves. The smug grins were gone, replaced by confusion and unease. Tom turned to face them, his voice carrying across the showroom. You've all had your way long enough, he said, his tone steady. But starting today, this dealership isn't just about selling cars. It's about respect. It's about treating people the way they deserve to be treated. And if anyone has a problem with that, they're welcome to leave. The room was silent, the weight of Tom's words sinking in. Ray stood frozen, the once confident manager now a shadow of himself. Tom didn't revel in the man's discomfort, but he felt a deep sense of justice. This was only the beginning, and he was ready for whatever came next. The news of Tom Harrington's sudden ownership of Silverline Motors spread through the town like wildfire. The transformation of the dealership became the talk of every coffee shop, diner, and front porch conversation. People speculated about what Tom might do with his newfound power. Some laughed at the irony of the situation, while others felt a deep sense of satisfaction seeing someone who had been wronged take such decisive action. Tom, however, wasn't interested in the chatter. He had work to do. His first priority was to evaluate the team he had inherited. It wasn't just about getting rid of those who had wronged him. He wanted to understand the culture that had allowed such behavior to thrive. Early the next morning, Tom called a meeting with all the employees. They gathered in the dealership's glossy showroom, their faces a mix of confusion and trepidation. Ray Cormack stood at the back, arms crossed, still reeling from the events of the previous day. Tom had made it clear that Ray's days of running the dealership were over, but he allowed him to stay temporarily to assist with the transition. It wasn't out of kindness. Tom wanted Ray to witness the changes he was about to make. Tom stood in front of the group, his demeanor calm but commanding. Despite his casual attire, he carried himself with an authority that silenced the room. Let me start by saying this, he began, his voice steady. "I'm not here to ruin lives. I'm here to fix what's broken. And believe me, this place is broken." The employees exchanged uneasy glances. Some of them had grown comfortable under Ray's leadership, enjoying the leniency that allowed them to prioritize profits over people. Others had stayed silent, too afraid to challenge the status quo. Tom continued, his gaze sweeping over the group. "I know what happened to me here wasn't an isolated incident. I've heard the stories. People in this town avoid this dealership because they feel judged, disrespected, or downright ignored. That changes today. From now on, we're going to treat every customer with the respect they deserve, whether they're wearing a suit or overalls. If that doesn't sit well with you, there's the door." A murmur spread through the group, but no one moved. Tom wasn't surprised. Most of them needed their jobs, and he suspected some were curious to see where this was going. He took a step closer, his tone softening slightly. "I'm not saying it'll be easy. Change never is. But if you're willing to be part of something better, I'll give you every chance to prove yourself. You'll get fair pay, proper training, and a work environment where you can take pride in what you do. But make no mistake, there will be accountability. No more shortcuts, no more games. If you're not willing to rise to the challenge, you'll be asked to leave." Ray scoffed from the back of the room, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "And what makes you think you can run a dealership, Tom? You don't know the first thing about this business." Tom turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "You're right, Ray. I'm not a car salesman. But I know people. And I know that respect, honesty, and hard work go a lot further than arrogance and greed. That's something you never figured out." Ray opened his mouth to respond but seemed to think better of it. He sank into a nearby chair, his defiance tempered by the weight of the situation. Tom turned back to the employees. "Now," he said, clapping his hands together, "let's get to work." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Tom brought in consultants to help train the staff on customer service and sales ethics. He implemented new policies to ensure transparency in pricing and fair treatment for all customers. The dealership's website was overhauled to reflect its new mission statement: "Cars you can trust, people you can count on." But the changes weren't just about policies and training. Tom knew that to truly transform the culture, he needed to lead by example. He spent hours on the showroom floor, observing interactions, stepping in when necessary, and offering guidance. He also made a point of getting to know each employee personally, understanding their strengths, weaknesses, and motivations. One of the most surprising revelations came from Jake, a young salesman who had been part of the group that mocked Tom on his first visit. Jake had initially been defensive, insisting that he was just going along with the others. But as Tom got to know him, he saw potential. Jake was eager to learn and seemed genuinely remorseful for his actions. Tom decided to give him a second chance. "Jake," Tom said one afternoon as they stood near the service desk, "I see something in you. But if you're going to stay here, you need to prove that you're serious about changing." Jake nodded, his expression earnest. "I will, Mr. Harrington. I know I messed up, and I want to make it right." Tom smiled faintly. "Good. Then let's start with this. I want you to mentor the new hires. Show them what this place can be when we get it right." Jake looked surprised but didn't hesitate. "I'll do my best." Meanwhile, Tom's efforts began to draw attention from the community. Customers who had avoided the dealership for years started to trickle back in, curious to see if the rumors were true. They were greeted warmly, treated fairly, and left with smiles on their faces. Word spread quickly, and before long, the showroom was bustling with activity. Not everyone was thrilled with the changes, though. A few employees who had thrived under Ray's leadership struggled to adapt to the new expectations. One by one, they left, unable or unwilling to meet Tom's standards. Each departure was a reminder of how deeply ingrained the old culture had been, but Tom didn't waver. He was building something better, and he knew it would take time. Despite the challenges, there were moments of triumph that kept Tom motivated. One afternoon, A man in his 70s walked into the dealership wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. He reminded Tom of himself, and as he approached the front desk, he was greeted warmly by Jake. "Welcome to Silverline Motors," Jake said with a smile. "How can I help you today?" The man hesitated, then said, "I'm just looking. Not sure I can afford anything here." Jake didn't miss a beat. "That's no problem at all. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to help." Tom watched the interaction from a distance, a sense of pride welling up in his chest. He knew there was still work to be done, but moments like this made it all worthwhile. As the weeks turned into months, the dealership began to thrive in ways no one had expected. Sales increased, customer satisfaction soared, and the community started to see Silverline Motors as a place they could trust. Tom's vision was becoming a reality, and in the process, he was proving that respect and integrity weren't just good principles, they were good business. But the journey wasn't over. Challenges still lay ahead, and Tom knew that maintaining the new culture would require constant effort. He was ready, though. This wasn't just about running a dealership. It was about creating something that mattered. The transformation of Silverline Motors was well underway, but Tom Harrington knew the most challenging part was still ahead. Changing policies and revamping customer service were steps in the right direction, but real change required more than that. It demanded a shift in mindset, both for the staff and the community. The dealership's history as a place of elitism and arrogance had left scars, and rebuilding trust would take time, patience, and a deeper commitment to doing things differently. One morning, as Tom reviewed the dealership's financial reports in his small, unassuming office, there was a knock at the door. Jake stepped in, looking a mix of nervous and determined. "Mr. Harrington," he began, fidgeting slightly, "there's something I think you should see." Tom raised an eyebrow, but nodded, gesturing for Jake to continue. Jake handed him a tablet showing a social media post. The image was a side-by-side comparison. The old Silverline Motors with its sharp-suited staff posing arrogantly in front of luxury cars, and the new Silverline Motors, with employees smiling warmly as they helped customers. The caption read, "From snobs to saints, the Silverline transformation." But is it for real? Tom read through the comments, many of which were positive, praising the changes. Others, however, were skeptical, accusing the dealership of putting on a facade to improve its image. One comment in particular caught his eye. "Let's see how long this so-called respect lasts when the cameras are off." Tom sighed and handed the tablet back to Jake. "Well, they're not wrong to be skeptical," he said. "We got a long way to go to prove this isn't just a phase." Jake nodded. "I thought you'd want to know. I've been trying to keep an eye on what people are saying about us." Tom gave him an approving look. "Good. Keep doing that. And let's show them we mean what we say, not just through words but through actions." As Ray walked away, Tom couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction. The dealership was thriving, and Ray's bitterness was a testament to the success of the new direction. But Tom also knew he couldn't rest on his laurels. The real test would be maintaining the momentum and ensuring the changes became permanent. As the months went by, the dealership's reputation continued to grow. Employees who had once been skeptical of Tom's vision became its strongest advocates. Jake, in particular, blossomed in his role as a mentor, earning praise from customers and colleagues alike. One day, he approached Tom with an idea. "Mr. Harrington," Jake said, "I was thinking we could expand the Silverline Cares program. Maybe partner with local schools to teach kids about car safety and maintenance. It could be a way to reach even more people." Tom smiled, his pride evident. "That's a great idea, Jake. Let's make it happen." Months after the launch of the Silverline Cares program, the dealership was thriving in ways no one could have predicted. The lot was bustling with activity, not just from customers but from community members who came for workshops, repair assistance, and other outreach events. Tom Harrington's vision was becoming a reality, and for many, Silverline Motors was no longer just a place to buy cars. It was a symbol of integrity, second chances, and community care. But success came with its own set of challenges. As the dealership gained prominence, it also attracted scrutiny. Local businesses that had once dominated the market began to see Silverline Motors as a threat. Rumors started to spread, many of them fueled by competitors. Some claimed the free services offered by the dealership were a scam to lure in customers. Others accused Tom of using the program to cover up questionable business practices. Tom didn't let the rumors shake him. He believed actions spoke louder than words, and every decision he made was guided by that principle. However, one incident threatened to derail everything he had worked for. One morning, Jake burst into Tom's office, holding his phone with a worried expression. "Mr. Harrington, you need to see this," he said, handing over the device. Tom glanced at the screen and saw a post from a local blogger, someone known for stirring up controversy. The post accused Silverline Motors of exploiting its staff, claiming employees were overworked and underpaid while Tom pocketed the profits. It even included an anonymous testimonial from someone claiming to be a former employee, painting the dealership as a hostile work environment. Tom read the post carefully, his jaw tightening. "This is nonsense," he said finally, looking up at Jake. "But people are going to believe it." Jake nodded. "What do we do?" Tom stood, his expression resolute. "We don't hide from it. We address it head-on." That afternoon, Tom called an all-hands meeting. The staff gathered in the break room, their faces tense with concern. Tom stood at the front, holding the printed version of the post. "Some of you might have seen this," he began, his voice calm but firm. "It's a lie. But it's a dangerous one because it attacks what we've built together. This isn't just about me or the dealership. It's about all of us. The work we've done, the trust we've earned, the community we've served. I'm not going to let this define us, and neither should you." The employees nodded, their unease beginning to give way to determination. Jake, who had been standing near the back, raised his hand. "Mr. Harrington, what if we tell our own stories? Show people what it's really like to work here." Tom smiled faintly. "That's exactly what we're going to do." Over the next few days, the staff came together to create a series of videos and posts, each one highlighting a different aspect of life at Silverline Motors. Employees shared their personal journeys, explaining how the dealership's culture had changed their lives. Customers joined in, sharing testimonials about how the Silverline Cares program had made a difference in their lives. One particularly moving story came from Maria, the single mother who had received the first donated car. In her video, she spoke about how the dealership's kindness had inspired her to give back to her community. The response was overwhelming. The videos went viral, flooding social media with messages of support. The dealership received calls and emails from people across the country, many of them expressing admiration for what Silverline Motors had become. The negative post was quickly overshadowed, its author forced to issue a retraction when it became clear that their claims were unfounded. But the victory was more than just a PR win. It was a testament to the strength of the community Tom had built. The conference was held in a sprawling convention center, with hundreds of business leaders in attendance. Tom took the stage, his hands slightly trembling as he adjusted the microphone. He began with a simple statement. "I never set out to run a car dealership, but when the opportunity came, I knew it was my chance to make a difference." As he recounted the journey from his humiliating first visit to Silverline Motors to its transformation into a community-driven business, the audience listened intently. Tom didn't shy away from discussing the challenges he had faced, including the skepticism, the resistance from staff, and the personal doubts that had crept in along the way. He spoke about the importance of respect, transparency, and integrity, not just as moral values, but as cornerstones of a successful business. By the time Tom finished, the room erupted in applause. As he stepped off the stage, several attendees approached him, eager to learn more about his methods. One, a dealership owner from another state, admitted, "I've been running my business the old-fashioned way, focusing on profits above all else." Hearing your story has made me realize I've been missing the bigger picture. Tom smiled humbly. It's never too late to change. It starts with treating people the way you'd want to be treated. The experience marked a turning point for Tom. He realized that Silverline Motors could serve as a model for others, proving that success didn't have to come at the expense of integrity. Over the next few months, he began hosting workshops for other business owners, sharing his strategies and encouraging them to adopt community-focused practices. Back at the dealership, Tom's vision continued to evolve. He expanded the Silverline Cares program, introducing new initiatives like scholarships for students pursuing careers in automotive technology and partnerships with local nonprofits to provide transportation for families in need. These efforts further cemented Silverline Motors as more than just a business. It was a vital part of the community's fabric. Despite the accolades and growth, Tom remained grounded. He still spent time in the garage, tinkering with cars and mentoring younger employees. One day, while working on a customer's car, he was joined by Jake, who had become one of his closest allies. "You've done something incredible here, Tom," Jake said, leaning against the workbench. "But what's next? Have you thought about what happens when you're ready to step back?" Tom wiped his hands on a rag, considering the question. "I've thought about it," he admitted. "This place needs a leader who believes in the values we've built. Someone who will carry the torch, not just for the business, but for the community." Jake hesitated, then said, "I don't mean to be forward, but I'd like to be that person someday." Tom looked at Jake, his eyes thoughtful. "You've come a long way, Jake. When I first met you, I wasn't sure if you'd last a week. But now, I can see the passion and commitment in everything you do. If you're serious about this, we'll make it happen. But it won't be easy." Jake nodded, his determination evident. "I'm ready for the challenge." Over the next year, Tom began grooming Jake for a leadership role, teaching him everything he knew about running the dealership. Together, they continued to innovate, finding new ways to serve the community and strengthen Silverline Motors' reputation. When the day finally came for Tom to step back, he did so with confidence. At a small ceremony attended by employees, customers, and community members, Tom passed the keys to Jake, symbolizing the transition. As he addressed the crowd, his voice was filled with emotion. This dealership started as a place that judged people by their appearances. Today, it's a place that sees the potential in everyone. That's not because of me. It's because of all of you. You've shown what's possible when we choose respect, integrity, and kindness. I'm proud of what we've built, and I know it's in good hands." The crowd erupted in applause as Tom stepped aside, watching with pride as Jake took the reins. Silverline Motors was no longer just a reflection of Tom's vision. It was a legacy that would endure, shaped by the values and dreams of everyone it had touched. For Tom, that was the greatest reward of all.